Hello, this is Gabriela Alcantara-Diaz, and I am with Semilla Multicultural, and I have here Frank Carbajal. We have engaged virtually through LinkedIn, and we share passion. And the passion truly is for the goal of increasing wealth among our Hispanic communities. And this is really our first venture as a podcast. So we're going to be totally authentic and honest. And I'd really love to, sort of give the microphone to Frank, and let's just have this introductory episode to our new adventure.
Yeah, so I'm very excited, Gabriela, Gabby. It is an honor. I know we have talked about this, and really it was ignited through a conversation that you had with Dr. Jake that we are mutual friends with, and first I'd like to send positive thoughts and prayers to folks in Los Angeles County, Southern California. I know Jake lives down in the Los Angeles area, and so many of our friends and family members. I think that, one thing that we know is it's important for us to talk about, the wealth builders, the wealth creation, because, let's just face this adversity that folks are facing in Los Angeles. It's time to talk about how we protect families, through these type of events, these tragedies, and I'm excited to dive into how we not only are launching today, but throughout 2025, we'll have a guest per month, and with me, my name is Frank Carvajal. My background is undergrad. I was actually a social worker turned entrepreneur. And so one thing I do know is the need of underserved communities and unbanked communities. And I was really motivated and inspired to become an entrepreneur in the early 2000s. And, my dad, my papa, God rest his soul, was the sole inspiration behind that with my mom. And, I am today married with three kids, and my wife is a great person and the backbone of my entrepreneurial dreams and making sure that it's not about Gabby and Frank, it's about our community. And so I'm really excited to you know have not only this conversation, but make sure that the conversation not only resonates, but more importantly, take action and be proactive about what we discuss, through this podcast.
Yes, and so well said, Frank. When we talk about our backgrounds and us being Hispanic Americans, I mean, I immigrated to the States at the tender age of 7, and my parents were such a huge influence on my brother and I in going to college, and just seeing how we could really grow as a community. And it was so welcoming. I mean, I came into a community where it was very diverse, and myself being from Uruguay. Most of my friends actually are Cuban American here in Miami, Florida. And I think that's also the interesting thing about you and I, that we can sort of provide perspective on both coasts. And at the end of
Yes.
the day, it's really about Hispanic America, right? And when we talk
Right.
about, this whole concept that you and I feel that it's so important about how we can build wealth among our
Yeah.
Hispanic communities, it's the fact that a lot of Hispanics are entrepreneurs. They're entering corporate America. But one of the things that we have to be very mindful of is how do we simultaneously empower our communities to be thinking long term, right? How can they, as they're working hard and they're working smarter, how can they build wealth for the well-being of their entire family, as we know? And and I think it's important, like you said, like what's currently happening right now in Los Angeles, when we think of how many small business owners that are Hispanic that are losing everything, how many we know that in our Hispanic community, oftentimes real estate and the investment in your home really becomes the anchor for your wealth. If you lose that, what happens? what happens to your not only your home but your livelihood and your family? How are you able to rebuild? So we're hoping that with our conversations, right, and as you said, with our dear friend Jake and other speakers, how we can bring some of those voices of reason, some of those experts, some of those that truly understand what our communities are going through, the challenges that we face and the barriers, but knowing that as you can sort of reach out to a network, I think you and I talked about this too, that goes beyond your immediate circle of influence,
Right.
oftentimes you're able to find those allies that can help you. And
Yeah.
and I think it's really powerful. I'm really excited. I think that there's so much potential in the Hispanic market. Oftentimes, you know, I think about my brother that passed at the age of 53, and he would basically visit all the markets across the border markets. He became a mechanical engineer for Toyota, and he would always say, "It's like, you know, you could be another Lewis." He came to the States, didn't speak a lick of English, and here he was speaking in front of universities and high schools to really encourage other Hispanic students to pursue a career in engineering, and knowing that, you know, they can make something of themselves, that there are really no barriers.
Yeah, and sorry to hear about your brother, 53. That's is right around our age range. 55, and I think one of the things that we think of in terms of our Latino Hispanic community is health equity. Health equity is something that is so important in terms of thriving financially and building wealth. You have to have the health accessibility through, you know, well checkups annually, whether it's screenings or, in our community, diabetes is prevalent, and we do know that Coca-Cola and Pepsi are multi-billion-dollar companies. But I will be um, one to witness and say that many of my family members, including myself, have a hard time letting go of Coca-Cola or Pepsi products. And then we remind ourselves of folks that are in their 50s, as you had mentioned, your brother or my brother who passed away last year at 59, that have these habits that really will hold us back. So in terms of wealth creation, there are so many barriers, and that's what we're going to discuss, how we break down those barriers in order for us to succeed and galvanize collectively to make sure that we have these resources for our community and our future leaders. And yeah, your brother is a testament to many of the stories that we're going to be sharing with our community. So I I want to ask you, what do you think about real estate? Because I noticed that in our community we have, and we speak of Los Angeles, and you had mentioned Palisades, for example, is a very affluent area, and then Altadena, which is near Pasadena, not so much, but at the same time, it impacted all lives. And at the end of the day, most of the folks had mentioned that when they lost their home, what they missed the most are those, cherished items like family photos, jewelry, whether it could be a wedding ring. But then when we think about how we we get to that point, what do you think is the importance of why we need to invest in real estate early on?
I think part of the issue with real estate is that it gives you a level of control. I think to build some equity in your life early on, if you're able to, and the fact that also, you know, as anything, it also becomes another tool in the toolbox of really building wealth, where then you could possibly gain money through an equity loan. You know, it allows you to really understand the formality of the way American or capitalism works. And obviously, for a lot of Hispanics, they may come from other countries where maybe real estate is unaffordable. The availability of that is not there for them. But I think that in the U.S., there's home ownership, but I also feel as though the other side of the coin when it comes to real estate is that sometimes Hispanics then only they put their all their eggs in one basket. So they'll go ahead and if they buy a home and they renovate and they keep investing in the home, whereas that should be sort of maybe the entry point, but then you have to think and expand your horizons and sort of evaluate how you can diversify some of those investments, because at the end of the day, if you have a home and you have to sell it, you want to have equity, obviously, but you want to have a fluidity and having that flexibility. And I think that's where we're at a crossroads where in the Hispanic market, I truly believe that we've got to a point where we are in middle class and we are gaining a foothold in upper mobility. And within that, I think we have a huge opportunity, especially with the second generation and the younger Hispanics that are entering corporate America, to see and understand how they can sort of multiply their wealth by really evaluating diversity. And it's not necessarily only having ownership of a home.
And one thing that I've done some research on is the fact that you had mentioned the allyships that we build and the collaboration and making sure that it works for us. But one thing I not only research but that we experience, Gabby, is the lack of mentorship to the lack of executive sponsorship, and we need to really be in front of individuals to let them know that we're aquí estamos, we're here, we are present, and we are ready to not only be coachable, but learn the process. Because, the process for many of us is that we're first generation, and first generation doesn't come with the mentorship package or the toolkit that you had mentioned. Uh, the first generation doesn't come with the first second, third college degrees. That generational cycle is something that and I don't like using the word barrier so much, but when we do studies, it says barrier. So let's use it as conquering the challenge, because we are resilient folks. The Hispanic Latino community, I believe, I'm not being biased, are the most resilient because of, what we're doing today is showing showing up. But I feel that showing up isn't enough. And so what we need to do is be like you and I and many of our colleagues and many of people that we know have the courage to say, listen, I'd like to be part of not only your network, but if I'm not part of your network, I'm going to build my own network that's going to include people in our community. And for those reasons, Gabby, that's why I felt really motivated and inspired to create the Silicon Valley Latino Leadership Summit, is because I didn't have these mentorships or these folks that provided me a roadmap to that corporate ladder, or that roadmap to venture capital or access to angel investors, and that it is important that we understand that we together are building an ecosystem. And the ecosystem, what is the most important thing, is making sure that we're not being competitive against one another, that we have to be selfless, we have to be inclusive, and we have to, collaborate. And I think those are the keys. And I feel it's important because, I will never forget, Gabby, in 2022, I saw this one big online Hispanic event happening. And it was, of course, from September 15th through October 15th, which is known as Hispanic Heritage Month. But not only that event, but many other events, I noticed that corporate America was spotlighting us, making sure that they gave us as the Anglo would say, kudos. and and I just felt, wow, this is interesting. This is the height of COVID, and I feel that well, it was going down in terms of, getting the vaccines and stuff, but I just felt like, well, this can't be right. We need to really spotlight folks, not just on a month basis, but every day. So through that, I was really inspired to create the 365 Latina leader. And, I have been consistent, not because of my own motivation, but because of our community. And that inspires me to know that there are so many great folks in our community that need to be spotlighted, whether it's in finance, corporate America, nonprofit, education, science. It's important that we really spotlight individuals. And that's how, wealth is built. Wealth is built based on the wealth of knowledge, and the wealth of knowledge then is transformative to follow your passion, be authentic. And then, as I was taught early on, if money follows, it follows because it understands that you are a person of principles and a person of authenticity and a person that is more importantly doing it for not only yourself, but for
For
community.
others. I agree. And it's almost, when you think of when opening a door, sometimes, you're fearful, you don't know what's on the other side of that door. But I think we've
Mm.
all, and this is obviously a truth, a universal truth, we all fear the unknown and what's behind that door. But once you open the door and you go in, you feel as though, wow, it wasn't that bad, right? You're feeling something of the unknown. And I think that for most Hispanics and a lot of immigrants and most individuals. I mean, I think in LA, even the individuals that are very affluent and they've lost everything. And there's this sense of despair because, like you said, I lost a photo, I lost a wedding ring, I lost these memories, these homes. To all of us, no matter if it's a tiny home or a mansion, they represent memories. They represent a collective being of individuals, right? And I think that that whole issue of opening the door, if more Hispanics, if we can sort of push them a little further, through those doors and understanding, oftentimes when we think of, I mean, there's probably no greater challenge, right, than being a person uh, leaving your country without anything, not
Yeah,
knowing that you're going to arrive in another country with nothing, with
that's
maybe a
right.
suitcase with $10, and these same individuals are the ones that should be honored. And what can we learn from them, right? What can we
Yeah,
learn from them and their vitality to succeed, their adversity, their resilience? There are just so many things, and oftentimes a lot of them. I know that in my 35 years of being a multicultural marketer, and one of the reasons why I really wanted to focus more on the Hispanic affluence aspect of it was that we were very grateful. We were very blessed in Florida with a lot of the clients that had the vision, and we were able to really enrich the lives of a lot of Hispanics that otherwise maybe would have never had interface, let's say, with certain brands, as we all know, right, in certain categories that would never speak to them. And the affluence is there and it's continuing to grow and it will continue to grow. And we need to change the narrative and we need to make sure that those Hispanics that are in positions of power and affluence, like you said, is how do you open the doors for other Hispanics? And, we can never sort of forget where we come from, even though as cliche-ish as that sounds,
yeah,
it's important for us to understand because that gives us, I think, a sense of I think as an empowerment as human beings, of sort of understanding that just because you've made it doesn't mean that you can lose it again, right? And I think that's also the beauty of the resilience of the Hispanic market because of the immigration flow and still having family that may be in another country and are not doing as well, that it's a constant reminder of
Mm.
how easy it is to lose what we have.
Yeah. And what what ties do you have to Uruguay today? I mean, you have relatives in Uruguay, and who inspires you on a daily basis?
So I have my entire family from my mother's side. She was born in Uruguay and I was, and my brother. And they're all there, all my cousins. We really immigrated. It was only the four of us. So we always, it was the four musketeers. And
Yeah,
then the rest of my family is in Spain. My father was born in Spain. And I have some cousins that also they immigrated, my uncles back in the 40s and all of that. And they are such an amazing group, and it's so interesting. I don't know if this has happened to you, but the fact that I can travel, and I've traveled to many places, and every time I go to Uruguay, I almost feel when I just not only my family but hear the accent and I'm there, I feel like I belong. But then it's interesting because when I come to the US, um, I love my life in the US and I feel that I'm
yeah.
truly a Hispanic American. But for me, who inspires me, I mean, I have two children. I have a granddaughter that just turned two,
Congratulations.
but my mom to this day continues to be my biggest inspiration. And that's why when I started Mi Mamá Una Brava, platform. It's just that she was such a maverick in her young age, and she always, as a working mom that I was, and she was, and she would
Yeah,
always never hesitated to sort of not. To make sure that I didn't feel guilty, that if I worked and I built a career, but I built a family, and she would always say, your children are surrounded by so much love. They not only do they have the love of their mother, but they have their love of their father and their grandparents and their cousins. So, that always stays with me because I think that also as women in general, oftentimes, you have that challenge, right? That you deal with the guilt. And then sometimes, I've met young people, Frank, that were abandoned by a mother, and
yeah.
they're,
It's unbelievable. Yeah,
they're in their 20s and they're young adults and they're working. And then that's why I say that we all have so much power at our fingertips. The fact that you can talk to them about maybe what college they should consider, or the fact that maybe we can get them an interview and polish up a resume. And the fact that you have these young people, or this person in particular, and she lives with no bitterness.
yeah,
And she doesn't have the love of a mother, and she was raised by other individuals, not even adopted. And those are people that walk among us that I don't know if I would live. I don't know, just the fact that she is a happy person and has no
yeah. It is.
bitterness
Yeah,
in life.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting because I think about and I shared this just yesterday. And one fun question here is, say Uruguay played Spain in a World Cup final, who would you root for?
Oh, wow, that's a hard one, but I would say probably Uruguay.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was gonna say because your mom.
And they're like probably a better team. My father was addicted to the, football, even
Uruguay,
though he was
Uruguay, Uruguay
Spaniard.
has won. Yeah, Uruguay has won World Cups. In the early days, and in 2010, you had Forlan, you had Suarez, you had great players. So Uruguay is a powerhouse in football. So one of the things that I thought of is your friend she's a friend that you mentioned.
Hmm.
This person is amazing. Completely, that's resilience. And I think of my parents, my mom and my dad, but my dad in particular, he was, it chokes me up because I think about how he made it, through life. He was an orphan. He was raised in Guadalajara in Mexico, but his dad, and it was interesting because I really didn't call his dad my grandpa until later in life, because I knew what my dad had shared was my dad was an orphan. His dad was a womanizer, and I still have a hard time calling him abuelo because, I'm a person that's all about my kids, just like you, all about your kids and your grandbaby that's 2 years old. So he was raised by a neighbor, and his neighbor became a brother because my dad's mom, my abuela, she passed at 9 years old when he was nine. And so the fact that he was raised, uh, and I call him a Theo, his name's Refugio, is amazing because my dad started working at 12, and then at 14, he had a vision to come to the United States. At 19, he did come to the United States as bracero, during the bracero program, the tail end of it. And, I was born in 1969. So my mom was also a bracero in the bracero program. And she ended up giving birth to me on June 19th, 1969. But she worked up until her third trimester in Imperial Valley, which reaches up to 110 degrees. And, uh, and that's probably why, I get fired up sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
that DNA is within us, all of us, and we draw from that. But I think one of the things that I've learned through life and our trajectory in life is that we have to turn that passion into strategic thinking and execution. And with those three tiers, the passion, uh, the strategy, and the execution is how we learn how to really be successful at any business. And and it all starts with the foundation, obviously. Your foundation that you mentioned about your mom and dad, your mom, especially that story reminds me of, my parents' journey. And I think that it's about us, providing, the nuggets that we're going to share throughout
Mm-hmm.
2025 with the community, because I know each person that comes on is something that I've learned is a common thread. The common thread is really that resilient piece. But what's most important, Gabby, is how we provide that blueprint, right, for people
Right.
listening, because
So,
the blueprint is really
mhm.
important.
So if we talk about that, and the name of the program is going to be our podcast, Latino Wealth Builders, and
Yeah.
we will have an array of speakers that will be coming that are Hispanic, and possibly, expand the speaker group, but really to bring a wealth of strategic, let's say, advice, right?
Yeah.
That a lot of our hopefully future followers will benefit in the Hispanic community. And I'd like to just to say to you as we end the episode, our first episode, and to thank you. I am so excited. I think that even through this virtual world, the beauty has been that we can really, it's allow us to connect with people that otherwise we would have never met. And I think that is such a blessing, and I consider you one of those blessings. And I am truly, truly looking forward to, putting our passions together, to helping for common good, to really, create wealth, because I think it's really critical in our communities. It's really critical for them.
Yeah, no, and I thank you, Gabby, and I thank you for being the person that you are, because you really are authentic and you really are a person that cares about our community. And I feel that when we have these discussions with our guests, it's important to also point out that we are at the low 2 to 3 percenters of wealth, as far as the high end of wealth, and we're going to focus on how we can really uh, tap into building on upon that to double digits. And I think it's important because we have, the power and the contribution, but turning the contribution into wealth is really being the investors. And And I know that we have them. We have folks that are in our community that could help us, you know, uh, because we can't do it alone. And I feel very grateful to you for reaching out and being the primary host. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I know we're done with this episode, and for our audience, this is our first podcast adventure with Frank. So this is really testing the waters, right, Frank? And
That's right.
so we're excited, and we will be providing more information on our second episode with our first guest speaker. Have a wonderful day, and thanks again, Frank.
Thank you all.
All
Appreciate you
righty.
all.
Bye
All right.
bye.
Blessings. Bye.
Bye.